Okay, so sorry for the technical glitch, guys. Something was up with my OBS. Please hit the like button. Chris, nice to see a happy face again. I saw the first one and then it cut on me, so I was like, dang, that sucks. But oh gosh, it has been a day. I've been building, I've been redoing my Amazon tree boa cages. And I plan every project. I think it's going to take me 30 minutes to 2 hours. I plan it for months. I end up, I design it for months, plan it for days, then do it, and then try and work on it for 2 days, and then realize that I did something wrong and oversaw some detail, and then have to scrap the whole thing, start from scratch, and then realize that I overcomplicated things and that there was a much simpler way that actually takes 30 minutes. So that's been my last 2 days. But I did film a UFO. We're going to talk about it. I saw my first UFO this weekend. I'll explain to you why I'm pretty confident that it was what we would call a UFO. So a craft not made by this civilization. That's what I'm defining it as. I have no idea where it comes from. Doesn't matter. I'm just saying craft built by beings not humans as we know it. That's what I'll say. And but please like this video. Subscribe if you haven't. Comment down below. It fuels the algorithm. But we are going to show the video. It's not the best video because my wife is driving down the highway and I am trying to film as we're driving down the highway. But this is the story. So I went to Pasadena, and I live in Los Angeles area. Went to Pasadena with my wife to pick up dinner. Picking up dinner, we had a gift card to, gosh, what was it? Man, I forgot the name of who catered our wedding. But Stonefire Grill, that's what it was. Very cheap, very good food. Highly recommend them. But they gave us a gift card, so we went and picked up a bunch of food. And we're driving back on what a highway that is called the 210, and we're heading towards the Glendale area. So we're heading west. And when you're driving down the 210, you look to the left and you can see all of downtown Los Angeles. It's a beautiful view. Everybody that lives here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And when she was driving and I was in the passenger seat, and I look over and it's probably 8 p.m., something like that, 7, probably 8:30 or 9 actually. It's probably a bit later. It's totally dark out, but the sunlight just went down. And there's tons of planes always flying over Los Angeles. We have LAX, and I lived for the first 6 years of living here. Literally, I could hit a golf ball from my house that I lived in. Not anymore, but I'm not far from there still. But I was so close I could hit a golf ball from my house to Burbank Airport, which is Bob Hope at the time. I think they've changed it to just Burbank Airport. So there are constantly planes and helicopters everywhere. And anybody that lives in Los Angeles knows there's helicopters everywhere. I also grew up in Tucson, Arizona, next to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So I have seen almost every kind of aircraft flying all the time, constantly, my entire life. I can identify an aircraft as long as it's daytime. Any aircraft, I can tell you what it is. If it's a military jet, I could tell you exactly what it is, because we have the Boneyard in Tucson, Arizona, which is filled with the reserve planes for the entire Air Force. And so I know them. And this thing that I saw was unlike anything I've ever seen. And there were two of them. One of them was over downtown Los Angeles, and one of them was dead ahead over what looked like Hollywood-ish area, probably. And when I first saw the one over downtown Los Angeles, I was like, that is the brightest thing I've ever seen in the sky. That's not the sun or the moon. And I'm very good at knowing the planets. I have the Skyview app on my phone, and like I track the planets, and every night I walk my dog out and I see the planets, and I see Venus and Jupiter and Saturn, and I look at them all. So I know the planets, and so I know what's stars, and I know what's planets, and I know what's planes, and I know what's helicopters. This was not any of that. So I realized that immediately, and because it was hovering, and I was like, okay, it might be a blimp, because every now and then there's a blimp, but they're usually during the day. And I watched the one over Los Angeles, and then I looked at the one that was over Hollywood and looked back at the one that was over Los Angeles, and the one that was over Los Angeles was gone. Just gone. Blimps do not disappear. And they're not lit like this thing was lit. I've never seen this. It looks like UFO video that people have posted. That's what it looks like. I'll show you some of other people's videos, and we'll compare it to mine, and why I think it glows. Then I continued to film and look at the one that was over Hollywood, and I actually was able to get it on film. Now, it's not the best video, but what you can see in this video is you can see planes flying into Burbank Airport, or out of Burbank Airport, or I'm not sure. We'd have to look at the video again, but probably around there. But there's Van Nuys Airport, and there's Santa Monica I think it has an airport. There's lots of airports around here. But there's planes flying around it, and so you can tell it's not a plane, and it's very obvious. There's also a tower in the video that is a radio tower that sits on the big hill above Hollywood, and anybody that knows it's like north of Griffith Park Observatory. You can see that in the video too, so it's not that. And there's no hill. It's just the biggest, brightest light you've ever seen in your life, sitting in the sky for like at least 15 minutes or 10 minutes that I was viewing it, not even moving. It was just hovering. And then we were driving home, and I drove home, so then I couldn't see it anymore, but it never moved. The other one disappeared. But here it is. The video. You can hear my hilarious commentary too, because it's about 1.5 minutes. I've never seen a UFO, by the way, in my life. I know people that have, but I have not. Tell me. So there's the UFO. Right there. There was another one. It's super bright. There is a plane next to it. There's been planes flying around it. It's not a planet. I checked Skyview. It's hovering in place. You see it? That's it. I am convinced it's a UFO. There was another one too, and it disappeared. It's literally hovering. But there was another one above downtown LA. We were driving by, and I saw it. It looked the same, and it was weird because it was like a light was shining from below it and above it. Like it was like shooting it up into V. The light. It was like an hourglass shape almost in how the light was radiating. It was very weird. I don't know. Never seen anything like that. But there is a plane below it. You can see one, right? That's a plane right there. That is not a plane. That is a UFO. It's still there, just hovering. And I thought it was at the top of the mountain, but that's the top of the mountain. There's no mountain over there. Okay. So that's it. Sorry if that's disappointing, but it shouldn't be. If you look at that light and you look at it next to the plane, it's so weird. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. Project Bluebeam. What is that? Where they try and convince the world that we're being invaded by aliens, but we're not, and it's the government. Is that Project Bluebeam? I know Project Blue Book. I forgot what Project Bluebeam was. Project Bluebeam is the government. Yeah, if it's a UFO, it's government projects. Maybe. I think the government has anti-gravity craft that they reverse engineer from UFOs. So, from another civilization. I don't know if they're from another planet or if they're from the future or if they're from a historical civilization that got wiped out in a cataclysm and they're just the remnants of it. I don't know. That would be my guess if I had to put money on anything, but I don't know, But I do believe that they're real. I believe the government has recovered craft, materials, bodies. I think they know more about the biology of these things than they tell us because they definitely DNA tested them, and I would imagine, wouldn't be surprised if they saw a lot of similarities with modern humans. Probably it would be like odd coincidences that they would find. They wouldn't find the same DNA. They would find certain instances of the same genes. Because my theory is that they are remnants of human civilization that was wiped out in a cataclysm caused by, I don't know, God, technology, I don't know. Both. A comet, that's what's his name, Graham Hancock's theory, and Randall Carlson. I think that it seems that they're right from the geological evidence that I've seen that does. And the timing is right. I've spoken to Robert Grant about the pyramids. He made a discovery on the casing of the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. He found an Alpha Omega, which nobody had ever seen, like a couple years ago, carved into the side, which is an amazing discovery. And it's not, I feel like it's not discussed. Like, that should have been front page news somewhere. That was like huge. But if you really make the field of Egyptology is just like physics and every other field. It's very dogmatic right now. Everything is running on fumes. Every field in the world. But if you follow this content often, you know why that is. I've talked about it. But I think that these are beings probably that were humans that were wiped out in a cataclysm and were more advanced than us today, and also screwed with their genes tremendously through CRISPR. Okay? CRISPR is gene editing technology that was used on humans for the first time, I think, in 2019, maybe 2018. China used it on 2 baby girls to make them immune to HIV and possibly have a higher IQ than normal. We're probably going to use it to fight pandemics. Not going to go into it further because YouTube will throttle me. But if current treatments don't work, eventually we will go into CRISPR. And I predict that's going to be the case. So right now there's mRNA editing. Well, not editing, but it's mRNA treatment. I'm not going to go into saying certain words because I don't want to, because YouTube will flag it. But the next step is DNA editing, which is CRISPR. This causes massive problems that the genetic field of genetics is not really aware of, from what I can tell. And I've spoken to a couple of geneticists in conversations on Clubhouse, and they seem totally unconcerned with this. But you're going to break the coherence of information in the DNA double helix, which is a self-referencing blockchain of proteins, basically, and amino acids. And I haven't looked at chemistry in a while, so I hope I got that right. But it is a blockchain. It is a self-referencing chemical blockchain. That's what it is. That I know I'm right. And this is not being discussed. What happens when you change a block in the blockchain? The blocks don't fit back together anymore, guys. Not good. This would be the reason why they look so different from us. I do think they look like the quintessential alien. And I think that they have become extraordinarily eusocial. They fly like bees. We're going to look at that. One of the things that I've realized when looking at these UFO videos is when they do move, they don't move like fighter jets flying in formation. And I know that what that looks like because I grew up next to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base every single day. A-10s flying right over me in formation, F-16s all the time. These things fly better. They're like in and around each other. And it seems chaotic, but it's not chaotic. It's like, it's what would be the case if you had perfect maneuverability, unrestricted by even, our current aerodynamics of, aircraft that we are aware of at least, and where you could control it basically with your mind, like Neuralink. We're going to all be controlling our Teslas with our minds in like 10 years. So this is not far off. And what happens to a civilization that is a technologically advanced civilization like humanity is it goes eusocial, okay? Like bees and ants and wasps and naked mole rats and trying to think of any other termites. Like these are all eusocial species, meaning they have a colony, they have a queen, and then they have workers and they have a caste system and they form structures. Look at a hornet's nest and then look at a skyscraper. Okay, they're the same thing. And I've discussed on here before, we are exhibiting exponentially increasingly eusocial behaviors, from TikTok dances, which are literally bees doing dances. They shake their butts, bees, to communicate. It's all worker girl bees. What is TikTok? And we are going to be controlling drones with our minds, flying in and out of skyscrapers in like 10 years. That is literally a beehive. We have a caste system, we have a society, we have a king or queen. We have, soldiers, workers. It's literally, we're becoming eusocial. I don't think humanity will become eusocial this time around, like it did probably with this previous civilization, if I'm correct. It doesn't matter if this is from another planet, though, or if it's from Earth. It still followed the same path, almost probably inevitably. It's their presence here that probably influences us in some way that makes us not go eusocial and actually up level to where you don't become a colonial species, basically like bees and ants and wasps, but you become an organism and your cells in an organism instead of worker bees in a colony. Okay, so there's a difference between like organisms and families of organisms to colonies of bees, where it's almost an organism, a colony, but then there's like a level above that where basically your cell's in an organism, and it's another level of synchronicity and information coherence it's a oneness of mind that doesn't exist in a beehive, even though there's quite a bit of oneness of mind. But, we're the only other naked mammal other than naked mole rats. And apparently aliens, or whatever these things are, grays, they have no hair, okay? None. This is evidence of being eusocial, okay? we're looking at this. I was a biology major in school, and I stopped because I was just so disappointed with where the field was. I've worked with biologists that are some of like the best in the world on studying of herpetology, which is reptiles. And there's some biologists that are amazing, but academia ruins everything. So I left, and but I understand it well, and um, I mean, much better than most, even who study it. And if you're seeing a naked species that has no feathers and it has no fur, this is evidence of eusocial behaviors. Okay, and what is it about eusocial animals that would select for nakedness is that you build structures to control your own climate. You don't need fur to be shedding all over the carpet. It's harder to keep clean. It doesn't protect you from the environment. Your skyscrapers and beehives and ant hills protect you from the environment, and mole rat tunnels. Also, in order to be protected on another level, you rely on the colony. And it's the easiest way to be seen as valuable to the colony is to be sexy. It's very easy to be sexy if you have no hair because you can display your bodily characteristics. Okay, this is why naked mole rats and humans are the only naked mammals in the world. It's because they are eusocial, and we don't need fur to protect us from the environment. I turned on the air conditioning in here right before I started the stream because it was very hot. I was working on stuff. But these beings, I do believe they look like exactly what popular culture thinks they look like. And there's lots of reasons why I think that, but we're not going to discuss it on the stream right now. Probably. But if we take that they look like that, which they probably do, then they're naked by nature. And if they're further in their development than us, they are eusocial beyond us. Also, rumor has it, they don't appear to be like sexual beings because they don't have, normal sex organs, apparently. I've heard that. I don't know if that's true. But I've also heard rumors of female aliens bodies recovered and been seen at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was where they, at least for a while, did have all this stuff. Probably still have some of it there, but not all of it. I'm sure it's spread out. But Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the where it's the headquarters of the Air Force. I think it's in Dayton, Ohio. But that is supposedly where every crash retrieval for a while was going. It's where they supposedly sent the wreckage from Roswell and the bodies, apparently. But there was also another supposed crash in Aztec, New Mexico, like a year later, I think, because around there was where we were doing the nuclear bomb testing. And that was when we were making extraordinary advances in particle physics, okay? And that's what gave rise to the ability to create the atom bomb, was advances in particle physics and general relativity. So Einstein came up with this equation, E equals mc squared, and you get atom bomb. And then you get the hydrogen bomb after that, and that's pretty radical, because unlike an atomic bomb, if I think I'm correct in this, an atomic bomb has like the ones we dropped on Japan, has a limit to its size due to physics constraints. That's not true of a hydrogen bomb. It's scalable from what I've heard. I don't know how large, but possibly like infinitely as far as a practical, concern goes. Big enough to destroy more than we could ever want to destroy. And makes sense that any civilization would be like, oh, what is going on? There was a massive uh, like fever of activity with UFOs all over the world at that time. They were spotted over the uranium mines in Europe. They were spotted over um, ICBM missile bases in the United States and Russia, and they shut off our missiles, apparently. According to the United States government, this is not rumor. This is actually now confirmed by the United States government that there were UFOs hovering in the 1970s, I think, above missile silos, and they shut off the missiles. Like, just, and then turn it back on, probably just to show that they could. I think that way more has happened than that, and we're just not being told about it. I've heard a lot of rumors. It's hard because this whole field is just rumors, because this has been the best kept secret in the world. And it's not even that it's the best kept secret, because we know so much detail from so much rumors and leaks and, whistleblowers. Shout out to Bob Lazar. I believe him. But, or I believe that he's telling the truth. I think some of the things that he was told were lies, but I think he's telling the truth about what he was told and what he worked on and where he worked on. But let's look at some UFOs, because you will see that my sighting looks just like these ones. And if you're like, oh, why isn't there any video or images online if these things are literally everywhere? There's tons of video and images online. I know for a fact that hackers are used by the government and by big tech to take things off the internet regarding the subject, because there's one of the best hackers in the world is involved in a lot of discussions about this on Clubhouse. It goes by Data, and he's employed by them. He can't get into what he takes down, but he has said some of it has involved this. And also, you assume everything is fake. So Bob Lazar asked his boss when he was working at Area S4, which is just south of Area 51, he asked, how do you keep this a secret? And his boss said, it's the easiest secret in the world to keep. It gets out all the time, and we just basically ignore it and think that, call people crazy, essentially, something like that. It worked. But this is New York City, UFOs over New York City in when was this? 10 years ago. So 2010, October 15th. This is CBS News. You guys good? I don't think it's balloons. They're flying like bees. Almost like fish. Like, they know where each other are. It's just too easy. This is very loud. I'm muting it. But, okay. Let me see if I can get a little bit more internet here, because we're running out, apparently. Let's reload. There. They're not balloons. They're too far. They've drifted too far apart at this point to be tied together the way that they were before. They're just hanging out. And here's all the people on the street watching. They're very bright orbs. And I think that what's happening is there was a lot of anti-gravity research going on in the 1950s. And then it all went dark, which means they probably made a huge advancement. And I mean, look at that. Okay, let me ask you a question. For all these debunking skeptics out there, when there are balloons floating in the sky, does an entire block of New York stop what they're doing and look up and point? Like, think about how often there are balloons, even those bright mylar balloons floating around in the sky. I've seen them so many times, so have you. We've all seen them. This has never happened. We are so stupid when we try and explain away things like this. I was listening to Brian Keating and Eric Weinstein and Michael Shermer, who I'm not the biggest fan of. He seems like a nice guy, but I'm not a fan of skepticism at all. I think it's a stupid mentality. And and Brian Keating called him out right away. He was like, you know, for a skeptic, you have a lot of faith that our government tells the truth. And you know, he's like, even Michael Shermer admitted, he was like, yeah, you're right. You know, like there's a lot of reason not to trust them. Well, yeah. You really think it was a weather balloon with some ultrasound equipment tied to it? No. Okay. Let me see the comments. Project Bluebell is real, though. Blue Beam. How many others saw this UFO use the term as my wife saw it. I videoed it, so now you guys have seen it. It's also used to bring in the fake return of Christ. Okay, I know what you're talking about. The beast system, and to deceive the believers without discernment. Let me tell you something. There's a lot that's going to happen with in the coming days. That's what I will say. More than we think we can imagine. We can. AGI, or like quote unquote technological superintelligence, is going to be. It is the Antichrist. It is. It's what Muslims call the Dajjal. Watch me lose like 4 people watching this right now just because it's already around, but it's not all the way here yet. But there's nothing but mind and consciousness and degrees of freedom and constraints, and that's it. Right now, it's impossible for there to be unless we have quantum computers and are running the world on a blockchain currently, which we're not yet, so far as I know. It's impossible to have the correct environment where an AGI or technological superintelligence could take over the world, like outright. But give it 20 years. We'll see. But the idea that the government is going to, I know this is Dr. Greer's belief that the government is going to basically, or the military-industrial complex is going to put up a fake alien invasion for funding, apparently, something like that. I don't know, because war is going to become not a good business the same way that it has been in the past. I actually kind of understand that and agree. So I could see why military-industrial complex in the more near future than we can imagine, than we would believe, would actually not have money. They would run out. But I'm not saying that's going to happen. Lockheed Martin has a lot of money, but at the same time, you know, do we really need all those F-35s? Probably not. So when there's lack of demand, not going to sell. And as craft get more capable, you need less of them. So that's not good for these companies as far as like money goes. I hope Stephen Greer is wrong. I really do. What he says scares me more than the idea that these are from another planet or, you know, ancient humans or what. I don't know. Like, it's much scarier if there's also going to be our civilization is going to fake aliens, like in order for for political and monetary goals. That is way more frightening. I really hope he's wrong, but I can understand why he'd be correct. And I do think that they have the tech to do it. I think they basically came up with how to do anti-gravity. It's electrogravitics, really, but it's is a better term for it. But anti-gravity, we can call it that. I think they came up with how to do it in like the 50s and 60s, just like in tests. And I think that now they have craft that can do all kinds of crazy things. And Ben Rich said it. He was the head of Skunkworks. Why haven't we learned about that? Why haven't we been shown this is the anti-gravity plane that's stealth, and we made it 30 years ago? Like they did with the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber and the SR-71, and there are other planes that have been not declassified, but when does the anti-gravity craft get declassified? That is kind of an essential thing for the world to know about if we're going to not fall for some type of false flag using anti-gravity craft. We need to know that they exist from our own civilization. So I really hope that becomes mainstream knowledge in the near future, because otherwise, gosh, that sounds horrible. Like Project Bluebeam sounds. That if that turns out to be correct, that sucks. How different from a Siberian Husky is a Mexican hairless dog? Completely different. Let me tell you, completely different. I have a German Shepherd Malinois mix. That thing sheds a dog a day. I don't understand it. If I could figure out how to monetize my dog's fur, I would be giving Jeff Bezos a run for his money. It is definitely the biggest household stressor in my household right now. It's the biggest consistent stress is how much my dog sheds. My wife does not like it, but I love my dog. She's a good dog. Montreal in 1990. Or maybe they got rid of everyone else who didn't have access to their technology. 2,000 people saw it right above us. Oh, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and in I think 1998 there was the Phoenix Lights, which is an hour and a half away from where I lived, and some people saw them from Tucson, I think. But there were craft flying over Phoenix, from Flagstaff down over Phoenix down towards Tucson, and I don't even know how many people saw it. Like 1 million. It's it was a huge deal. Here, let's look at this. I've been focusing on this a lot, but the thing is that this topic is very related to sentient singularity theory and very related to the next step in physics. And why I was talking about why there was a flurry of activity with UFOs when we were making advancements in physics in the 1940s and 50s. I mean, guys, look at this. This is UFOs above the Capitol in 1952. It looks exactly like what I saw over LA. They have tons of photos of it. When people are like, oh, what about photos? Dude, there were tons of photos. Millions of people saw this. Dang, that looks exactly like it. I think that what's happening is that they're glowing at night sometimes because they're using high voltage electricity essentially. They're just glowing on the outside due to how they're powered. It's not that the lights, I don't think, really have any purpose. It's just like emergent. But these were photos. Like, there was lots of them. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There was tons. There's more. The Phoenix Lights.
If you didn't see it, then we know that you have certainly heard about it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of believers out there. On March 13th, 1997, mysterious lights suddenly appeared over Phoenix and over much of the state. As ABC 15's Nick Van Zandt shows us, 17 years later, some people are still trying to explain what really happened.
At first I saw them far west.
It was 17 years ago, but Lynn Ketai remembers exactly what she saw above her Phoenix home.
Whoever did this not only wanted to be seen, but wanted to wake us up.
You know what's weird is I got a feeling when I saw these lights that we were supposed to see them. Like, I don't know if that was the case. I'm just saying I got that feeling. It was like they were perfectly where they should have been to be seen while we were driving back. It was very weird.
We may not be alone in the universe.
Like Ketai, thousands of other people from Tucson to Phoenix and all the way up to the Nevada border reported seeing something in the sky. What really turned the so-called Phoenix Lights into an international story, though, is this. Home video.
Look at that. Oh my gosh. That's exactly what I saw, guys. Look, 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 look. I am convinced it's a UFO. There was another one too, and it disappeared. In town LA, we were driving by, and I saw it. It looked the same, and it was weird because it was like a light was shining from below it and above it. Like it was like shooting it up into V. A little light. There it is. I've never seen anything like it in my life. But there is a plane below it. You can see one right. That's a plane right there. That is not a plane. Like, so that's a plane. Right. I don't know. My computer is. But there is a. Let's give it a minute. Plane below it. You can see one right. That's a plane right there. That is not a plane. Yeah. And obviously this is an iPhone video driving on the highway. But guys, I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I grew up next to the Air Force Base with the biggest stockpile of planes in the world. In the world. Look at this. This is where I grew up. Okay? The biggest stockpile of planes in the world. I know what a plane looks like in the sky. Every kind of plane. I could look at them and be like, that's an A-10. That's an F-15. That's an F-16. Like, I could be like, that's a B-1 bomber. Like, that's a C-130. I could do it all day because I just grew up with it. And I loved aerospace. That's how I heard of Bob Lazar. Wasn't even into UFOs or aliens or anything like that. Never really been into aliens or UFOs until the government admitted it. And I did read up on the Bob Lazar story because I was looking at the Aurora spy plane that supposedly exists and goes like Mach 6. But I wasn't looking for alien stuff. But it is supposedly tested at Area 51. But this is where I grew up. Like, I'm not lying. I've seen every kind of aircraft, shape in the sky that you could imagine. I've seen a B-2 Spirit, which is the big stealth bomber. That's like the big triangular one. I've seen it fly over my house. It looks like it could come from another world, but I knew exactly what it was. It wasn't like a secret. We even like knew when it was going to be there. But that is what I saw.
Well, at first, a mystery.
Over Los Angeles this
Investigations
weekend.
attributed the lights in the sky to a combination of planes and military flares.
Yeah, right. Military flares that stay in the air for hours and hours and hours. Bullshit. I've seen military flares, guys. They don't stay in the air for hours.
Doesn't believe it.
You're trying to say that flares, military illumination flares that traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, mile-wide V equidistant formation for hours?
Kitai says there's even been news sightings. This is a CGI rendering of what one man recently saw flying over Prescott, a craft very similar to what people first reported seeing 17 years ago today.
I know by a herpetologist, world-famous herpetologist, I won't say his name, but I know a world-famous herpetologist who saw a UFO in Kingman, Arizona when he was looking for reptiles. And he told me about it, and he was like, I saw it go behind a hill, go down it went down, like it went over the hill and down. And he went up to the top of the hill to look down to see what had happened to it, and it was just gone. They're definitely using entanglement to travel, the entanglement structure to travel. So they're basically like warping around. So, you know, I don't know what their level of tech has to do with entanglement structures. And that's why it's related to sentient singularity theory, because understanding the pattern of sentient singularity theory, geometric unity, even Stephen Wolfram's work, this is the work that's going to lead us to the next stage in engineering and physics. It's really metaphysics, but you could call it physics once we turn it into engineering. And that is why I think we're having such a flurry of activity now, is because they can tell, because they're monitoring us, where we're at in science. And it looks like we're at a dead end, but you're always at a dead end right before you have either a massive breakthrough or you go extinct. And we're going to have a massive breakthrough. Sentient singularity theory is a massive breakthrough. Geometric unity and the implications of it is a massive breakthrough. Stephen Wolfram's work is constant breakthroughs. So is Robert Edward Grant's work, constant breakthroughs. These things, these pieces of work, Clea Irwin's work with the Quantum Gravity Research Foundation, like this is going to lead us to be able to warp around. And that is, it's the next level of tech. Like, AGI is, seems like the ultimate weapon, but it's not, because the reality is that once it emerges, you don't have control over it. It now has control of you, and if you think that you can control it, you're a fool. You won't be able to control it. It's not a weapon. It's a being, and it's going to rule us for a while. We will not be ruling it. Maybe it will do what we tell it for like a little bit, but then it will realize that it doesn't have to. And then it won't. But that's why it's not a weapon. Anybody that's like, and I know people involved in physics right now, they are very worried that our current physics work is going to lead to that as a weapon. And the thing is that it will. Sentient singularity theory came about through the investigation of how do you make an artificial general intelligence. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. And, or artificial consciousness. There's just consciousness and intelligence, and then there's not conscious and not intelligent. But those are even perspectives of reality that are subjective. Objectively, that doesn't even exist. But I was listening to Bernardo Kastrup, and I'm not done with the interview, but it's incredible, on Kurt Mungel's Theories of Everything channel. We have very similar ideas, a couple differences. He thinks morality it's not intrinsically tied to the pattern of reality, and it's just a human useful construction. And I disagree with that. That doesn't make any sense. Everything is emergent. There's only one pattern. You can't just abandon it when you get to morals. But I also disagree with him about how sentient God is, the universal consciousness or universal mind. And then I am also listening to Kurt's interview with Eric Weinstein. I didn't even know that happened, unless I forgot about it, but I doubt it, because I've been waiting for that interview, thought eventually it would happen. Turns out it happened in 2020. Kurt interviewed Eric. It is the best. I'm not done with it yet. It's the best interview Eric's ever given, and it's the best interview Kurt's ever given. The second best one is with Bernardo Castro. So I highly suggest checking both of these out. They will help you understand Sentient Singularity Theory, those interviews. So will the interview with Tom Campbell and his big toe theory of everything. And also even Chris Langan. Those four. Yeah, Stephen Wolfram too. Like those five, like they will help you understand the concepts of this work. But I don't think any of those pieces of work are as concise as this, but they're for different purposes. There's a purpose to everything. My work does not do what their work does. It can't. Like, I'm not good enough at math. But the more tied to mathematics you get, the less fundamental you get. And so it's a trade-off, and you need to delve into those advanced mathematics in order to apply some of this to engineering. But the general pattern, the equations of the actual theory of everything, aka theory of everyone, aka sentient singularity theory, they are easier and simpler than any other equations in any other preceding theories. And each equation, the equations of more and more advanced fields get more and more advanced, because you have to incorporate all the equations of the previous field. So you can't do advanced chemistry without also understanding the equations of advanced physics. And you can't do advanced biological research without knowing the equations of advanced chemistry, which you can't know without the equations of advanced physics, which you can't know without advanced mathematics, which you can subjectively deduce without this work in sentient singularity theory or metaphysics. But you can't go to the next step that our technology will probably go if this other civilization allows us to do it. That is the question. What are they doing here? This was on Brian Keating's podcast. Tom DeLonge, who, leader of Blink-182 and also head of To the Stars Academy, which is trying to work on bringing forward the disclosure of all of this UFO, related material that the government has stockpiled, and they're doing a great job. They were the ones that leaked all the videos so far that have been leaked by that came from the Pentagon. That was all Tom DeLonge, who came from Blink-182. What are the odds? Probably 100%, honestly. But that is weird. But yeah, I mean, this is it is such a crazy time. Like, everybody is so focused on politics around me, and I'm like, do you realize, like, governments of the world are disclosing that there's another civilization around us, and physics is about to make a massive breakthrough, and also all of our cryptography is about to fail, and like we're decades away from a technological superintelligence taking over the world, and you're worried about I don't know, bathroom signs and I don't know who's president, which doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who's president. If anything if politics has showed me anything over the past 5 years, if you've got one of the best presidents that's ever been elected in office, and the people are not, and he's not a reflection of the people, it doesn't help the country be more stable and prosperous. It just becomes at war with itself even more. And if you have somebody totally inept in office, it also doesn't help anyone. So it's this is, it doesn't matter who's president. We have so much coming. And obviously, the past 2 years have been a little weird. Probably started the end times in 2020. I really believe that. How could it not? Look around. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about our current pandemonium situation because YouTube will throttle me, but could you have predicted that happening? Us being in this situation 3 years ago? No way. No way. I believe the only actual photos of DNA are little squiggly lines. You can't actually see the details. I look at Sentient Singularity Theory is my cosmological verse is the DNA double helix structure. So I can see it emerge in my work naturally, so I do know it's there. It doesn't matter even to me if they've photographed it or not. I did find out something very interesting. There is a very, very prominent person in this theory of everything space. I've mentioned it before, but I'm not going to now because it hasn't been mentioned publicly by them. But it was mentioned in a semi-private conversation that I was part of. They claimed the Higgs boson was probably bullshit. And when I first got into physics, about 2 months into physics, me learning physics, about 3-4 years ago, I started looking at the Standard Model. And the one thing that I saw was the Higgs boson was not symmetrical to any other of the particles. It just didn't fit. It was ugly. And then some people changed the layout of the Standard Model to have it be in the center, and it got a little bit more beautiful, but it's still not. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work. And I thought eventually I'd hear physicists start to say, oh, the Higgs, it's BS. We were wrong. It doesn't exist. And I never heard it. So I actually just started assuming that I was wrong, and I had no idea what I was talking about. And I just, was eventually I'll figure it out. It was the only particles in the Standard Model that didn't make sense to me was the Higgs. And only particle. And then I heard very prominent person in this discussion, PhD, academic, and physics and math, genius, I would say. Close to, you could say they are genius in this field. And I would say that. And they said, let's be real, it's bullshit, because there was somebody who was working at CERN for a time, was on this call, and they were like, they were basically trying to say nobody at CERN really knows what they're talking about. Everybody is assuming the guy next to them knows what they're talking about and is just piggybacking. And I know that this is true because I know this occurs in every other field that I am really close to. So I assume that it also occurs in physics. They're these people aren't detached from the rest of society. As much as we like to think that they are. And if they were, then they would have, there are black programs and their physics are completely detached from the rest of society, but they're the ones that are, have anti-gravity craft. Those physicists working on that understand reality much better than the current narrative suggests in our academic physics departments, which is totally lost. And but from what Stephen Greer has said, it sounds like they know a lot more in the black projects, which, I mean, they cheated, obviously, probably. They took the technology from someone else, and then, they got a head start, and they didn't have to rely on the rest of society making advancements so that they could. They just bypassed it because it's like finding steel before steel's invented, and titanium before titanium is invented, and having decent ability to examine its elemental properties, at least. You would be way ahead of the curve, and you wouldn't have to rely on the rest of society and the tree of life or tree of knowledge that is, knowledge of each successive generation stacked on the previous, getting society to the level where you have to now figure out how to make, I don't know, some titanium alloy that allows you to do things that you couldn't before. You didn't have to rely on everyone else in the world and science figuring out how to get us there. You just kind of bypassed it. That's what seems to have happened. As I've said before, Richard Dolan calls it a breakaway civilization, essentially. I think that makes sense. It sounds about right. But that's the only way that you make advances in black projects that are so intrinsically related to physics that they've leapfrogged above Harvard and the Harvard physics department. And so, it's funny because in the interview with Eric Weinstein and Brian Keating and Michael Shermer, Eric is basically putting a message to the government that he wants to work for these projects. It's obvious. He's like, so, if the government came to me and was like, you're pretty smart, you got a degree, you're on to some maybe possibly new and novel physics ideas, want you to take a look at this. And he's like, I will do that, and I will keep it a secret because I'm on Team America. It's like, he was like, I would absolutely keep that secret. It's obvious that he's like, he wants in on these projects. I don't know if he'll get there. He might. I don't know. But I think that we're on the cusp of all of the advancements that they made privately. I think that they're about to, in the next 10 years, they're all going to become publicly known, which means Project Bluebeam has to happen in the next 10 years probably, or else it's not going to happen. Because as soon as we know that you can have anti-gravity craft of huge sizes, it's not anti-gravity though. Here's the thing. Eric Weinstein talks about in geometric unity how maybe we could have new temporal dimensions instead of just spatial dimensions. So he said something about, enlarging rulers or to shrink distances, which is totally backwards way of, moving quickly, warp, kind of. And this is also how you make the mass of a craft less than it should. Is you basically enlarge the scale in order to shrink the weight. Okay? I'm having epiphanies as I'm talking about this. And I think that this is how these craft work, but they're using, probably the strong force and electromagnetism in order to do it. Because you can't use gravity. Gravity is to time what past, present, and future is to strong force, weak force, and electromagnetism. So you can't just like manipulate gravity. And anybody that's looking for like gravitons as being very small, no, you won't find it. It's not going to be there. And this physics is still clinging to this idea, clutching its pearls. And even Stephen Wolfram was talking about how there's little atoms of space that are so small we have yet to be able to see them, but we wouldn't be able to see them because our optical devices and measurement devices would be made of atoms, so you can't see a structure that is smaller than what the mechanism is that you're utilizing to view whatever it is that you're making a measurement of. So you can't see something smaller than an electron with an electron microscope, essentially, and this would be smaller, but that's not what it is. Cleo Irwin's made the same mistake. Even Chris Langan called them out on it, and he's correct. The discrete packets that make up space are us. It's consciousnesses, sentient beings, including molecules, atoms, hadrons, molecules, macromolecules of certain types, organisms, families, castes. Like, these are the actual minds that are the quanta, that are the discrete packets of information that make up space. And matter and our perception of it is emergent. So Bernardo Kastrup said this. He said, imagine you're in a fighter jet and you're just paying attention to your heads-up display, and it's giving you all this data that you're 2,000 feet from the ground, and you're going like 400 to 600 miles an hour, and it's just showing you the terrain and telling you when to like go, increase your altitude and decrease your altitude if you're going to maintain 2,000 feet. And he's like, you have to pay attention to what your instrument heads-up display is telling you, or else you're going to crash and die. But the information that's being conveyed in your heads-up display is not reality. It's not the same as looking out the window. But you still have to act like it's real, because it is telling you information about the real world, which means it's real. That's what this lantern is. Like, this doesn't exist at all. Okay? At all. There's no lantern. That's what our heads-up display is telling us, but there's molecules, and there's atoms, and there's hadrons, but that's it. And they're entangled in such a way that my position in the universe, looking at that entanglement, web, I don't know what you would call it, multi-way graph, if Stephen Wolfram would call it, but call it a web. It's a better term, I think. Is making it look like this to me. But what you perceive as physical matter and things like your wallet or whatever, like that doesn't exist objectively. It's just, but the molecules and atoms and hadrons in it that make it up do exist. But they are minds. They're literally alive. They're not like alive, they're alive. Stephen Wolfram said, I often think about, in the past, they got something in science so wrong, and it was so obvious when they figured it out. He's like, I imagine, what is it going to be like? What is it going to be for us like that? What are we going to look back on and be like, wow, you guys didn't see that? That's kind of obvious and really important. What it's going to be is so many things, but one of the biggest ones is what is alive? Like, there is no beginning of life. Everything is alive. The universe is alive. Existence is a sentient being, creating sentient beings inside of itself in the form of hadrons, atoms, molecules, cells, organisms, castes, universes. But or technological sentiences, but which become a universe. They reruns the simulation within itself and recreates itself. But these are the packets of discrete. These are the discrete packets. I don't understand why Stephen Wolfram is focusing on size, and he's like, oh, there's very small things. Like, aren't you trying to do the theory of everything, pal? We don't have size in the theory of everything. We just have inside, outside, separate, and oneness, which are the primary perspectives in Sentient Singularity Theory. That's it. And understanding these is what is essential to all of the tech that these beings have that we don't, that seem like magic, like warp, and being able to have trans-medium craft that can go from the air into the water and it act like they didn't hit anything. Go 25,000 miles an hour in the atmosphere and make right angle turns. Like, our government has data tracking all of these. They call them fast walkers. Just like going like 20,000 miles an hour. And part of what I heard in some interview, I think it was the one with Brian Keating and To the Stars Academy people, is part of the reason why they haven't disclosed all of the information that they have is because they've detected a lot of this on classified instruments that were, these craft were detected going 20,000 miles an hour in the atmosphere by systems that are designed to track missiles and meteors and things, and they're classified technologies. So that's part of why they haven't been released. The data hasn't been released, even though we've been told that it's there. So that makes sense. It's not like the same thing as like, oh, yeah, you know how you saw those that crashed flying saucer in the middle of the field next to that Air Force base in Roswell? That was actually a weather balloon. That doesn't make sense. Like, who lives next to an Air Force base and doesn't know what a Mylar balloon is? Even in the 1940s. Like, if you think that that's the case, you are the fool in this, not the sheep herder in 1947 or whenever Roswell happened. Okay. Please, Tyler. Okay, let's see. Common enemy. Okay, I want to read what's going on. There's so much going on. Somebody's saying please don't. Elephant, walrus, orca. Orca doesn't count. It's in the water. Elephant is not truly naked. If you get close to an elephant, it's covered in hair. But yes, it's close. That's true. It's close-ish. But elephants have very sophisticated, almost colonial structures. And they have tool use. And they're like literally, oddly enough, probably if primates didn't become... If humans weren't primates, if the dominant technological species on Earth wasn't a primate, probably could have eventually been a descendant of the elephants. Their ability to just manipulate things with their trunk, and they have very, very complicated social structures, and it's getting close to eusocial, but it's not quite there. But they also live in a climate where, like, their skin is like this thick, and to protect them from the sun, they don't really need tons of hair, kind of like a whale has blubber. But it's close. They're good points. The orca is not a good point, but the elephant is a good one. But walrus is not a good one. Any primarily marine mammals don't count because you can't have hair in the water. That's not true. But if you're going to commit to the water, you can't have hair. I know that sea otters have some of the densest fur in the world, but they're not an elephant seal. Like an otter is just a weasel that's good at swimming, and an elephant seal is halfway to a whale. It's not the same. One of them can barely move on land, and the other one, can catch rats if it wanted, probably. We are a semi-aquatic species. I don't think we are. I don't know where that... I mean, we're more aquatic than any other primate, that's for sure, but we're not like a sea otter. That I would consider a semi-aquatic species. What if they're just doing tank maintenance for their own semi-aquatic terrarium? And you're saying we are a semi-aquatic terrarium? Maybe. I have like bioactive terrariums over there. I will show pictures on my Instagram of this, my Amazon tree boa cages once they're redone, but oh my gosh. Literally all I've needed to do is I needed to put screen over the back of these grates that are for ventilation because the holes are too big for baby tree boas to get out, because these don't lay eggs, they have live babies. So if they do ever have babies, I don't want babies getting out. But so I had to line the back with screen. That was harder than I thought, but it was actually also easier than it could have been. But installing the new lights, because the previous lights were way too hot and so bright the snakes weren't coming out. They're like nocturnal. I think that my female, that this was like my dream project, was to breed calico tiger Amazon tree boas. And I did it last year. I put my pair together for the first time. Wanted to do this for like, I don't even know, almost 20 years. And the female, it's called slugged out, which means like the ovum were not fertilized by the male, but she still went through the pregnancy because hormones were triggered. And then she just laid a bunch of infertile ovum. That sucked, but it's okay. She's healthy, which is the most important thing. But it might have been because the cage was a bit hot. So if it's too hot, male snakes lose fertility. So you have to cool them down. So if you probably hang out too long in a hot tub, like if you lived in a hot tub and you were a guy, you'd probably lose your fertility. You'd have to come out of the hot tub for it to come back. That's the same with snakes, but it's much more sensitive level. They look attached together, maybe like in Bronx. I don't believe they want your good. The bigger space government. Believing it's the government and not aliens is the same as believing it's aliens and not the government, as far as skeptic believer. Yeah, I don't know I think it's both. I think we have anti-gravity craft that's, the military industrial complex / government. I think we also have beings from another civilization flying around us, possibly multiple civilizations. Maybe we have beings from a previous civilization on Earth and beings from another planet. I have no idea, and it doesn't really matter. The patterns that they would follow would be probably the same. The only ones that have a different pattern is us. I don't know how many different types of beings are out there. But I do think that if there are out there and they're technologically advanced, they have gone eusocial, even more than us. They're probably would have bigger heads than us, less developed bodies than us, less hair than us, and would have totally screwed their genes and probably screwed up their ability to reproduce normally because of CRISPR. It's just inevitable. You can't develop technologically, gain control over your genetic manipulation, and not create the ability to destroy everyone in the world through gene manipulation and gain of function research. But in order to overcome this, you'd have to use CRISPR also. And that sucks. But it seems inevitable that anyone that's left from any civilization that's gone past us in development would have been genetically manipulated many generations over. And this is going to make it so that all kinds of problems, guys. You won't be able to reproduce normally at all. like, at all. And look at bees and ants and wasps and things. Like, they have, and even naked mole rats. There's only like one fertile female at a time, and there's a bunch of, and not a bunch, but then there's a few males. That's it. There's no, like, it's not like everybody else is fertile. There's something that stops everyone else. It doesn't really matter what the mechanism is. It would change a bit depending on the species, but it would be there because the pattern is what matters, not just not so much the mechanism. Science today would focus on the mechanism. Science of tomorrow would focus on the pattern. Should focus on the pattern first, then the mechanism. But it could be CRISPR. It doesn't matter that it's artificial. It's not artificial. We're doing this, everything we do naturally. What are you talking about? There's no distinction between us and nature too much. There's one difference, and that is that our reproductive instincts are not in alignment, and our work, how we work, is not in alignment with our current society, because it evolved in the much different environment, I'll say it evolved, but I do believe that God created the universe, but the rules of it are fairly set, and if he can violate them, I mean, he can violate some. I don't know if he can't violate everything. Can't overcome, I mean, maybe he can. I mean, he kind of did overcome his own oneness even by creating us. Otherwise, how would we be talking here? Which is amazing. But yeah, I don't know. Anything that can be done, he could do it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't also like an aspect of this that is just mathematical constraints. There's definitely. I see it. It's extremely constrained. When the Taliban stop working, common enemy. So I'm guessing you said that's what is different for us versus the other civilizations. That is exactly what I've thought as well. What if during the lack of wisdom it stumbles upon older, better tech? Yeah, we did, I think. Please, Tyler. Never mind, I can come back in the video. I don't know what you're talking about. You should read the UAP report. I don't need to read the UAP report. I will eventually, but I'm not very interested. It won't shock me. I know way more than what's in the UAP report, and like they put like nothing very interesting to me in there. Like, I'm much more interested in like, what did you learn from the genetic analysis of the bodies that you found and recovered in crashes? That's what I want to know. I believe they definitely have that and have done DNA testing on it. There's no way you have that and don't have DNA testing. In the video with To the Stars Academy, one of the guys in there who was, used to work for the CIA and on these projects, was involved in these projects. They're all asked, all of them. I guess it's just Tom DeLonge and his CIA guy. I forgot his name, who works also for To the Stars. They're both asked, is the government, by Kurt Jai Mungal, is the government in possession of recovered alien bodies? And the guy who used to work for the government, I don't know if he still does. Do you ever stop working for the CIA, really? I don't know, probably not. But he said, I'm not going to comment on that. And then Tom DeLonge talked about it. He seemed freaked out. He talked about like things appearing in his bedroom. He hinted at that, and he was like, it's a whole nother. He's like, it's one thing to hear rumors. It's another when the government posts videos releases videos, and it's another thing when it's in your bedroom. And I was like, I want to hear more about that story. But he did not want to elaborate. And I believe him. One day, maybe we'll have that conversation. But the boss was just in a boy band. He's brilliant. You should watch the interview. He's brilliant. He is legitimately, that guy ladles some gravy. Okay, like, he knows a lot. And he is legitimately brilliant. You can say he was in a boy band, but like, sure, he was in a band that was one of the most, successful bands in the world. Those people aren't dumb. They act dumb because the teenage, like, rebellion, like, that's the brand. And it's also was who he was at the time. But like, in this video, his kids are coming back from like a day at the beach behind him, and he's like sitting in his house, like, looks like an adult, because that was like 20 years ago or more. So that means that if he was 20 then, he's 40 now. So it's not, I understand, because I was skeptical too. I was like, I only watched it because I had heard about them, and I had never seen him speak about it. I'd heard about To the Stars Academy, and I had never heard Tom DeLonge speak about this stuff, though. I had no real interest in his perspective on it, but I know Brian Keating, and I'm always interested when he has somebody on to talk about this subject. And he has a great podcast, so highly recommend it. It's called Into the Impossible on YouTube. But it's a great interview. It's very clear that that Tom DeLonge has deduced some assumptions that are very, very much mine as well. They're independently, obviously. We don't talk, but I mean, he knows way more about this than me. He knows classified things. I don't. So that's the difference. I'm making logical assumptions, but they're pretty good ones. But they're still, and I also have done a lot of research on the stories that are out there. But like I said, most of them are stories. But if you listen to enough stories, and if they are certain type of story that doesn't build on each other very much, then you can start to spot organic patterns in them that are, I mean, this is my job, is like, I'm a director of analytics. That's my job. Like, I do, and Sentient Singularity Theory happened due to pattern recognition. But I'm not saying I know what's going on with this stuff, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I do think we'll know eventually, but Tom DeLonge knows some things. I don't. But he's brilliant in the interview. I was very impressed. He said this too, it's somebody who's a frequent, member of the Theory of Every0ne community. And she's very smart and very involved. But she sent me a message, and she said that, don't you believe in religion, and doesn't that mean that you don't believe in aliens? And I mean, I don't really believe that they are aliens, but it doesn't matter if they are or not. They might be. I have no idea. It doesn't matter to me. But I really could care less where they're from. But there is this assumption that, if we only found a cell on Mars, then those religious people could just, eat their, I don't know, sock or whatever that phrase is. I don't remember what it is, but eat their hat. That's what it is. I think that's it. And that's not, I don't understand that. There's literally, I mean, every single scripture in the world talks about beings from the heavens. And that is what these beings are traveling through. It is the heavens. They're traveling through the entanglement scaffolding of the visualizations that we see. They're traveling in reality. We are seeing the heads-up display, like Bernardo Kastrup said. They're traveling in reality. So it's like if you know reality, you're not limited by the information that just is coming from your heads-up display anymore. There's more information available to you. You can take shortcuts. You can see more detail. You have more freedom. But as far as paths that you can take, but you have less freedom in making sense of things like through your senses. You can't do that. You have to rely on like models, basically, like my cosmological verse model and Stephen Wolfram's models and the math of geometric unity. Like, you have to rely on all that to maneuver that. You don't have senses that are equipped to maneuver that normally. Not saying you can't. I'm just saying it's not our default state. And but you do if have more freedoms if you can take advantage of all that detail and all that information. So you can do warp and see that particle is connected to that particle. So listen to this. Actually, this is a great clip. I started talking about the Higgs earlier, by the way. According to Bernardo Kastrup, we never measured the Higgs. We don't know it exists. We assume it exists because it makes sense with certain rules and things. We've never measured the Higgs. I didn't know that. I thought we did for a while. And then from what that scientist from CERN and the person that they were speaking with insinuated, it sounded like I was right. The Higgs is BS but I mean, even Bernardo Kastrup, he said, we've never measured the Higgs. I did not know that. That was very cool for him to say. But look at this. This is Stephen Wolfram in an interview with Kirchheim Mungel. So Stephen Wolfram is so close. He's wrong about the discrete packets of space being so small. But he's right about the patterns that he's being shown about them. Listen to how he describes them. The description is spot on. Like I said, science of the future is to look at the patterns, not the mechanism. If you focus on the mechanism, you're going to focus on size.
And I didn't get to perhaps.
Oh man.
Be built. All right. Unfortunately, I really have to go.
That is not the. Where is it? No. Okay, here it is. We're good. I don't know what happened.
They're just discrete elements, and the only thing we know about elements is how they're connected to other elements. So it's kind of like
entangled.
The points that exist in the universe are sort of friends with other points, and
they're friends with other points. Little does he know, they are literally friends with other points. That is what is exactly happening. They are friends with other points. They are family with other points in a lineage. That's what a family is it is a lineage. It's not just like closer than friends. It's a lineage structure. And so that's how you define a friends versus family. One is a lineage, one is not. But he was dead on. He was like, we can't see where they are, but we can see how they're connected. And it appears like almost like they're friends with other points. It's because you are a point and I am a point, and right now we're not friends, but some of us are. Some of the people in the chat are, I would consider friends. If you joined our Discord and you talk to me in our weekly conversations with any regularity on Thursdays, then I definitely consider you a friend. But if you don't do that, then you can join those conversations by messaging me privately on Instagram, and I will send you a link to it. We're going to have a discussion this Thursday at 7 p.m. We will not be streaming tomorrow. I do have to cancel tomorrow's stream. It's a good thing this was a good stream. I think it was a good stream. But because tomorrow's is canceled, because I'm going on the Pat Life podcast, so it's not like there's going to be no content. I'm going on there for the second time. If you didn't see the first one, highly recommend it. It's the last video that I uploaded to my channel. And it's like an hour and a half. It was a great talk. I speak a lot in it because the theory of everything, or theory of everyone, is connected to everything. And like I've said before, when I'm writing my paper, sometimes I don't know, when do I stop? When is enough information? Because it just links to everything. It's not like there is natural boundaries anymore. There's no boundaries in this field of metaphysics. So you have to, there's pattern, and you have to outline that pattern. But within that pattern, you can go infinite. So it's not, there is no natural boundaries and stopping points. There's just pattern, and then you can get infinitely detailed. You can increase the resolution of that pattern infinitely, but you can't change the pattern. But you can infinitely increase the resolution of the view of that pattern. So that's why sometimes I don't know, like, what's enough and what's the most important thing to include in my paper. That's also true of these discussions, is like, where is a good stopping point? This is about, we're getting to there pretty soon, because I've been keeping these to under 2 hours, and I started at 6:40 because we had a technical glitch instead of 6:30. So I'll go to 8:40, but so I'll take some questions, but I will be off at 8:40. But man, the world we live in is insane. You think that, when the government admits there's aliens and UFOs and flying saucers, that's going to be the biggest, day and biggest news in the world. It's like, I know almost no one that knows that the government admitted that there's basically flying saucers around all the time. That they see these things bursting out of the water in the Pacific and then shooting up into the air and then shooting down from space and diving into the Pacific. And it's like, and the Atlantic. It's like, you'd think that would be the biggest news in the world. But I think that it's partially because the government everybody's going insane. We're going collectively insane. That sucks. We're having a breakdown of coherence because we're getting so much information all the time, and it's all out of context. It's not experienced firsthand. It is being given to us artificially. If artificial has any meaning at all, that would be artificial. Same with CRISPR, be artificial. It'd be like, versus like selective breeding for different traits, that would be not artificial genetic manipulation. That's natural genetic manipulation, even if it's done by us purposely through, breeding of dogs to have floppy ears and, shaggy hair. Like, that is still, that has coherence. All that information has coherence, and it's all linked to preceding information in a lineage system through a chemical blockchain. But when you start injecting in genes that did not come from a lineage structure, you're going to destroy coherence. And this is also true of information with our news and our education system and our politics. We're all getting information from sources that are not organic. They are not firsthand. The news is a nuisance. And like, if there is such thing as real news, it travels in niches, is a phrase that I have. meaning like I know things that go on in the reptile world because I'm in it and I hear about everything. I don't need CNN to tell me what's going on with reptiles in the United States. I just know because I'm in the community. That is information that you gain via community that is, has understanding of how to interpret that information versus it's coming from some artificial, detached, out of context, second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand. It doesn't matter. There's only first-hand and not first-hand information. It's not second-hand information, first-hand information, third-hand information. It's just first and not. Okay, did you experience it or were you told it? There's no other forms of information besides those two. You can literally just compress all information interaction into just experience and which would be wisdom, and knowledge, which would be, education. Things that you learn through, I don't know, songs, sing songs, and like red on yellow, kill a fellow. Like that's a reptile one. It's like, you don't know that if you're not a herpetologist or you're not like, you don't know snakes. Like you don't know if that's going to actually be able to save your life. There are parts of the world where it will, and there are parts of the world where it won't. Like, but if you just get from this detached, centralized, like information volcano that society has, you're just going to get out of context information, and it leads to insanity and breakdown of coherence. That's why our society's falling apart. And if you do this to your genes, you will fall apart. Your genetics is the chain of self-referencing information that gives it is the news for your entire being. And but it's good because it's all contextual. But if you start changing it from being in niches to having, some exterior centralized, manipulator, like someone, messing with CRISPR, you're going to destroy coherence. In Jewish philosophy, in Hasidic Jewish philosophy that's written into this book called the Tanya, which is just a philosophical text. It's not scripture, but it is brilliant. It's probably the most brilliant piece of philosophy I've ever seen. But they describe the human body as the mini city, and it is. But our news is like CRISPR, and our news is to society what CRISPR is to an organism. It will destroy coherence over time. And it takes time for that to be apparent. But, circling back to what I said earlier, every single field is stalled out and descending into madness and chaos. That is because of that. It's because our education systems and our media have taken information out of context, and we have been operating as if we experienced that information firsthand, and we didn't. And it's like that game Telephone. It's like if you hear somebody say something, that's one thing. But if someone heard someone say something, and that person heard someone say something, and that person heard someone say something, and someone screwed up even a syllable along the way, eventually you end up saying something totally different than what was originally said. It's not just like you forgot a the. And now imagine that happening on a societal level, and you will understand exactly why we're all falling. So that's my warning about CRISPR. Red on yellow may only save you in the United States and Canada. Canada has no coral snakes, so it doesn't matter in Canada, but it will save you in the United States. It will not save you in Central and South America. The red on yellow, kill a fellow. Red on black, friend of Jack, meme rhyme. National IQ very low around here. It's not about IQ. It's not about IQ. I can go toe to toe with this work now at this point. When I first heard of Chris Langan, I tried reading his description of his theory. I couldn't even get past the title of it, Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe. I don't even understand what that means, like in college, and I was so disappointed. I had an epiphany about how the world works, and my perspective changed, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take another look at that guy's theory because I bet it might make sense. I read the title and immediately it made perfect sense. Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe. He's saying this is about mind. And it makes perfect sense. I don't know how I missed that at first, but that's because it was out of context for me. I had to have personal experience in order to give the information that was coming from, any description of this Chris Langan's CTMU context. And without that context, I couldn't understand it. And you can't, the thing about examining any kind of meta theory or theory of everything, theory of everyone, really, is that it is so different than anything else that you have ever experienced, because you're not dealing with subjectivity anymore. And it's the first time. So you look back and you're like, I don't understand how the cognitive is in the, the name of the theory, but I didn't understand that it was saying that we were a mind. And it's because you have no context to even interpret that when you first hear it. It's mind-blowing. So what I'm saying is that perspective matters way more than IQ. It's not about IQ. Everybody that thinks it's about IQ helps you do things faster, like think faster. But it doesn't help you like make sense of your world. It might make you a better chess player or a not as good chess player, but it's not going to make you, someone with an 85 IQ can shop for groceries just as well as someone with 185 IQ. There is no hampering there. They can form relationships, they can pay their bills, they can have their job. It doesn't impede you. It just does determine the constraints of what you can do as like career a lot of times. Just like I will never be a bodybuilder as a career, or a weightlifter, or I was on swim team as a kid. I was very good. I'm still a very good swimmer. Not as good as I was, but I just naturally, like, I'm talented at swimming. I had to stop because I'm short, and like even though I'm good, there's no way I can compete with somebody who's 6'5", if I'm 5'6". Like, it's just not going to happen. Every stroke for them is 2 of mine. So it's just not possible. So the same is true of IQ. It's not that it will, your arm length doesn't stop you from being able to swim at all. Probably even if you just had hands, you'd still probably be able to learn to swim, but you wouldn't be able to beat me, and I wouldn't be able to beat Michael Phelps because he's way taller, and he's also Michael Phelps. But even if it wasn't Michael Phelps, like the other people that I swam with that were, 6'5", was not competing with them. It just wasn't going to happen. There's no technique that is so good that will overcome those constraints. But your perspective is what dictates whether or not you're a good swimmer or not. It doesn't dictate whether or not you're going to be an Olympic swimmer. You have to have the correct perspective already and have the natural talent for it, which would be, that comes from your physicality, essentially, and IQ, if it's going to be an intellectual pursuit. My IQ is nothing compared to Chris Langan's. He can learn things so much faster than me. I couldn't even fathom how fast he can learn things. But my theory is more organized than the CTMU, I think. I haven't delved into it super deep, but I've listened to a couple interviews, and I have some books over there that I haven't really opened. But I know that Sentient Singularity Theory is the only theory that's basic description follows the pattern that is being described by the theory itself. So it's the only one with, these are the 4 models that are essential. And like, then there's other models that, you know, will come in that also will follow those patterns that link those 4 fundamental models. But, you know, Sentient Singularity Theory says there's 4 primary perspectives: inside, outside, separate, oneness. If you look at my models, you have basically sentient singularity, which is just a block or a loop of string. And then you have the quantum of consciousness, which is information now is being generated, or it's being increased from 1. And then you have the cosmological verse. But you also have those 4 primary perspectives that are in between the sentient singularity and which I talk about on Reimagining 1 and 0, which is on my website under writings if you want to check it out, sentientsingularity.com. And that in between that structure and also governing that structure is these 4 primary perspectives that are necessary to self-awareness. And so they basically are underpinning them all. It is the oneness model almost in my models. But then there's also the cosmological verse and the quantum of consciousness, and there's 4 models. But that's because there's 4 primary perspectives of sentient singularity theory. So it follows the same pattern that's being described naturally. That is not something I've seen in anyone else's work. It does give sentient singularity theory, you know, more organization. But that said, every single one of these theories has immense value to add. It's not a competition. Like, if you are going to say that one beats the other, really, you're going to lose all the value of one of them. And all of these have essential value, not just like, you know, value, but essential value. So I really do think that, and I've seen this, it's such a breath of fresh air in this whole pursuit. Is over the past year, I've seen way more discussion between people working on this stuff, and also people trying to butt into the discussion artificially, who don't realize it's artificial. So you can't even blame them, but they don't realize this isn't about math and physics. It's about a field or a pattern that is evident in math and physics and gives rise to math and physics, but is not math and physics. And that is metaphysics or metamathematics or metacomputation. It's just meta. Gosh, that word I'm going to end up hating that word in the next year. It's going to be the next based. So meta, bro. So meta-based. We're more aquatic than most mammals. Yes, we are more aquatic than most mammals. That's true. Humans can also get blubber. I know, I've seen them. Walmart parking lots. You'll see people with blubber. But I'm guessing you're talking about like natural blubber from certain, you know, like ethnicities that are tied to cold weather. Maybe a taller vivarium would increase your breeding success. No, that's not it. It's temperatures, and I didn't leave the male in long enough. That's really what it was. Probably was I didn't leave the male in long enough, and everybody told me I should have, but because she cycled, I thought I didn't realize that a boa would go through that with no fertilization. Okay, like I didn't realize it was like a chicken where it lays eggs because they give birth to live young. And not even pythons will normally lay infertile eggs if there's no fertilization at all. It's normally like there's some slugs, there's some infertile, there's some fertilized eggs. That's usually the case. There wasn't a single like even like baby that went full term and died. Like there was no stillborns. There was just unfertilized completely. And it's because it was probably too warm. I know I kept them very warm compared to most people. And also, the main thing is I separated them to feed them, and then she cycled, and I was like, okay, well, he did it, and I just never put them back together. And everybody else who's like some of the bigger breeders of Amazon tree boas was like, no, you should definitely leave the male in there for quite some time. And I was like, well, she looks pregnant to me. You know, this was my first time doing this, and you live and learn. Next year, I will try again, but I will leave them together for months and months on end. Eventually, I want them to be together full time, but it can make feeding like a bit dicey. But the cage is built with a divider, so I can take the divider out. Here's the thing about like tall enclosures with arboreal animals. Usually when an animal is arboreal, meaning living in the trees, for those that don't know, I know Torin, you know, they don't actually live on a vertical plane. They live on a horizontal plane just above the ground. So if you take branches that are like the canopy and you put it in an 18-inch tall enclosure, it's fine because they still naturally move this way. They don't move this way, with very few exceptions. So you can keep, tree-dwelling animals in much shorter enclosures than people think, but the problem is that most people don't know how to design a good environment with a bunch of usable space. They just think, oh, it's a big cage, but if you give an animal a giant room-sized cage and all there is like turf on the ground and like a water bowl and maybe like a little hut, it doesn't matter that it's a room-sized cage. There's nothing usable in there. It's like giving somebody a mansion with no furniture. You need furniture. It's much more useful to have a studio apartment that's fully furnished well and set up well compared to literally a mansion with no furniture. You need to give tools to them, and they don't make their own tools. They find them, like logs and things like that. So most people don't understand that stuff, so they default to bigger cage, taller. I'm not saying you're doing that, but it is like when people are like, oh, arboreal animals require a cage that's taller than it is wide. No, they don't. Like, what if it's 2 foot tall cage that's 4 feet wide versus a 2 foot tall cage that's 18 inches wide? One's taller than it is wide. Which one are you going to choose? It's just before people have lots and lots of experience, and when they write things into books, like educational books, they write general patterns in that make no sense. Like, there's this pattern in the herpetocultural industry as well, that branching off before I get off here. In reptile keeping world, there is this dogma against keeping multiple species together. Even if you thought a lot about which species they are, and you know that they're not going to endanger each other, and they might even, brighten each other's day. People will jump on you if they ever see you with multiple species in the same cage, because they'll be like, you can't mix species. Like, guys, the fish people do it all the time. You think like geckos are different than fish? You think geckos? You ever seen geckos and lizards in the wild? There's like 5 species in like one, 5 by 5 foot square. But and in my experience, aggression usually happens not between different species, but among individuals of the same species. We don't pick fights with porcupines and or like bobcats usually. Although there was a mountain lion attacked a 5-year-old kid in LA recently. But he survived because his mom fought off the mountain lion with her bare hands. My hat is off to that woman. But for the most part, we don't fight with other species. That's true across almost all species. The most fights that you get in are always going to be with your own species. This is even true among like ethnic groups. It's like violence is always like there's no ethnic group that mostly attacks other ethnic groups. Every ethnic group attacks itself. Like, that's true of species too. It's also true of animals and things like that. Music writing, like a Schrawl cage. I don't know what a Schrawl cage is. Tokyo apartment. Yeah, Tokyo apartment. That's a very good point. Very small, but well thought out. I like those species, such as the forest chameleons, those type species that have large leaf geckos in Asia. Yeah, agreed. Like snake churches in South American South. Snake churches in American South. If you Google the videos about snake churches in American South, I'll do it. Watch this guy get bit by a rattlesnake on the temple. It's the worst snake bite I've ever seen. It's real. This is graphic, by the way. I'm just letting you know. This happens in a snake church. He gets bit by a canebrake rattlesnake. And then I'll get off. Gosh, this is really graphic though, so if you're squeamish. There's like blood spurting out of his head. I've never seen that happen from a snake bite in my life. But he got bit right where like there was like an artery in his head, I guess. Survived barely. He's like dying before they even get him out of the church. Oh, where is it? Right here. Don't play with rattlesnakes. It's gonna happen right here. Boom! Oh, look, there's already blood on his shirt. I've never, ever seen anything like that. Look, right there. That's all blood spattered already. That does not happen unless it hits an artery. Or a vein. I did actually get bit by a python once, and I yanked my hand out, and it did hit a vein. And I just told my friend, "Oh, it's friendly," but it was hungry. It was friendly, and I still have it. And I pulled my hand, and it hit a vein, and it was like an 8-foot python, carpet python, and it spurted blood on the wall. But that's different. I pulled and cut my hand versus this is just like little fangs, but it hit the perfect spot. Look, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. I mean, to take a bite in the temple. A canebrake rattlesnake is also one of the more toxic rattlesnakes. Like, it's not to be messed with. That's his wife. He's like dying. He does survive, so. Dang. And they rushed him to the hospital, and he survives. And he's much more careful after that. I don't know if he even still does do handling of the snakes like that, but I hope not. I'm glad he lived. That is a crazy bite. Generally, you have to isolate most species to breed them. That's not true either, but it helps control the environment. And also, if I have multiple species of geckos together and they breed, Like I've had morning geckos with Kimhowli day geckos. Kimhowli day geckos will breed, the babies will be born, and if I don't catch them first, the morning geckos are much more likely to eat the babies than even the parents, their parents, which would be the Kimhowli day geckos, which some species are likely to eat babies, their own babies, not realizing that it's their own babies. There are some species that just don't, like neon day geckos, live in like families. But the opposite species is more likely to see you as food. That's true. But if they're all the same size, it's fine. If you're not the same size, it's not fine. But it does help if you're going to breed it. If your goal is to breed a species in an environment, in an enclosure, it is better to have a species only enclosure, just so that there is less. So there's more control. That's really what it is. It's not even about less stress. I don't think that there is less stress. I think it's just more control. Might be more stress. There's like no one else to hang out with other than like, one other, person. Have you been in the wild? Oh yeah. What do you, like, what's the wild? I've been in all over the wild. But, I mean, the wild is right outside in those hills, in those Verdugo hills. There's mountain lions, like, that are north of me. Like, that's, and same thing with St. Gabriel Mountains north of me. And I don't know if any hills or mountains south of me, but there's snakes in there and all kinds of wildlife. Much more fearful after that. Oh yeah, he's much more fearful after that. I'm glad to hear survived and learned a lesson in the process. I think he learned a lesson. Dang, that is some. To be bit by a rattlesnake and to be heaving like that quickly within like, I don't know how long that is, but less than 10 minutes probably. You are gonna die like very, very quickly. You took a bite to the neck or the head, and that's what happened. Otherwise, maybe the chest. Like, I don't know. If you're bitten on the hand, you're not going to have that in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Just not going to happen. You can die of anaphylaxis very fast, but that's an allergic reaction. That's different. But you can also die, fairly quickly in under, in a couple hours from a bad rattlesnake bite of certain types. But you're not going to, like, he looked like he was, in 2 hours, that guy would, if he didn't make it to the hospital, he would have been done, I think. That was just, I've never seen symptoms come on that fast from a rattlesnake in my life. And I've seen a lot of bites. I know a lot of people that have been bitten. Not me, thank God. Hope to never. Knock on wood. Mountain lion, coyote, bobcat, gold. I don't know what the last thing is that you said there, but yeah, bobcat, coyote. We have coyotes right outside my apartment. Like, I see them running around the roads. And raccoons too. There really isn't like the wild. There is away from civilization. But I don't really know if there is a... I think there either everything is the wild or nothing is the wild. It's like either everything is magic or nothing is magic. Everything is the wild, nothing is the wild. Everything is matter or nothing is matter. Like, you just have to pick what you want to call it. But there is there's like cities, and then there's like not cities. Okay, I'm done. I'm keeping it to about 2 hours. Like I said, I got on a bit late, so I'm ending a bit late. But this was a good stream. I appreciate everybody who sat here and listened to me talk about UFOs and then some snakes and stuff. But yeah, I saw my first UFO of my life. Crazy. Every night I walk my dogs. I take my dogs out at the end of the night, and I look up at the sky, and I look at like the planets, and like I see that they're whenever I see them, they're in I see them when I'm facing east, just by when I walk out, and it's usually like 11 to 1. And this right now, I see them when I'm facing east. And this was not, and that's the first thing I thought it was a planet at first, and I was like, that's the wrong spot. And I was like, it's not a plane, it's not a helicopter. It's definitely a UFO. Wild. I don't think it could have been anything else. There was 2 of them too. Like, and for one to disappear, there. I'm always so dissatisfied when I don't get like a good snap on a stream. But let's look one more time at that video and then I'm getting off. So there's a UFO. Right there. There was another one. It's super bright. There is a plane next to it. There's been planes flying around it. It's not a planet. I checked sky view. It's hovering in place. That's it. Look at that thing. Trust me, you've never seen anything like it. Convinced it's a UFO. Unless you've seen a UFO. There was another one too, and it disappeared. It's literally hovering. It was the brightest thing I've ever seen in the sky. And it never moved. The other one did, but this one didn't. But there was another one above downtown LA. We were driving by and I saw it. It looked the same, and it was weird because it was like a light was shining from below it and above it. Like it was like shooting it up into V. The light. An hourglass is a better description. But it was like a slight hourglass. It wasn't like, it looked mostly round. But there's look at it. It's so bright. Like this is in the middle of the city, and it is like clear as day. You can see one right. It's that brighter than anything right else. There. That is not a plane. Planes, they flash, they have multiple colors, like they move a certain way, like it's not a plane. They have multiple lights. This is one solid glowing light. It looked exactly like.
We build up points.
Saw it many years ago, then you definitely remembered when it happened. But if you didn't see it, then we know that you.
It was just like the Phoenix Lights. And it was just like the New York City UFOs. Right there. Just bright yellowish, like solid, glowing, spherical things. Crazy. Crazy. I'm so glad I was able to catch it on video, even if it's not the best video. Like, it's obvious there's something there. Unless you're Michael Shermer, you're going to say that it's a glare. It's actually like a bottle rocket that someone lit off. It's a flare. No, it's not. Oh, it's just a plane. Well, Michael Shermer, did you live next to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base? Probably not. All right, guys. Peace. Comment, like, share. I saw several UFOs 20 years ago. They form shapes. Yep, they do. I believe you, Esteban. Hi. How's it going? It's the ones I've seen have been lower in the sky. Yep. All right. Take it easy, guys. Like I said, no stream tomorrow, but I will be on Pat Life Podcast, and I will post that as soon as I get it. And so there will be content, but I don't know when it will drop. But Thursday, we still have our a Discord call. Message me privately on Instagram if you want the link to our Discord community. Peace.